Chris, have you ever subscribed to an email newsletter or filled out a form on a company's website or followed somebody on social media out of sort of idle curiosity about who they are, what their perspective is, what they do, just kind of like, oh, that's interesting. Uh, I'm kind of curious to sort of passively know more about that whole thing, whatever that is. Has that ever happened to you?
Yes, I've engaged in all those activities.
And these days, if you followed somebody on LinkedIn or connected with them, or for the last, you know, 10, 20 years, if you submitted a form on somebody's website with that as your primary motive, what happened?
Oh man, usually some kind of a contact back in the other direction. And I'll admit, I was prepared to be emotionally stable uh, with the emails and the downloads because that's been happening for a long time. But you mentioned the social activity of liking or connecting, and then getting a response that's not equal to the task.
Yes. Yes, we have been desensitized by, the immediate responses and SMS and calls for lead magnets, which hopefully are valuable and are applicable whether you are part of the buying process or not, in the buying process or not. But we've really gotten aggressive, and especially with automation tools and AI, about extending that same, let's call it emotion for now, into things like pitch slaps in LinkedIn DMs, right? And some of those other places. Um, the we're a little bit desensitized, right, to it in email, but when you may be able to think of, I can, of times where even in that context, it's been kind of aggressive, where maybe the lead magnet or webinar or newsletter does actually seem to be informative and the sell is really aggressive. Um, do you encounter that a lot, or am I the only one who takes
I
umbrage at
don't
that?
I don't answer Austin area codes because of NetSuite.
Yes.
Downloading some KPI guides, um, and then getting the SDR uh, calls over and over,
Yep.
several days after. It's like, especially when you're in our space, you can just envision the playbook on the screen, like check the box, check the box, check the box.
Yeah.
Uh, and I'll say, worst offender though, recently, getting an AI SDR call that asked me about a download a year and a half ago,
Yeah.
and with
Yep.
no other contact from the company between now and then. I'll tell you what, I actually appreciated, like, it was a well-known author of a book that I appreciated, and I joined the community, and like everything. Uh, yeah, he was here on my, let's say, trust scale, and I'm sure, knowing him, it's probably just an experiment that he's doing with AI SDRs, right? But that experience completely counter to everything that he teaches, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So
And
now he's down a little bit.
yes. Um, and being in the work that we are in, we also, we've been in the rooms for maybe not those specific conversations. I try to, if AI SDI conversations come up, I try to slide under the door if I can. But conversations of like, well, we have all of these, people that never responded in the CRM, or we disqualified them previously, or they just ghosted us after we qualified them. Why don't we try this AI SDR, or why don't we do a cold email blast to this audience? Because if we get, yeah, we've got 10,000 of them, and if we shake out 5 good qualified opportunities, that'll be the difference between making our targets for the month and not making them. So the math says, you know, burn it every time, right?
Yep. And we know the math is getting worse and worse and worse. I
Yes.
will say I've grown in my empathy a little bit for the situation. Um, so if I could just set this up like a little bit,
Yeah.
because what you just said basically comes out, they know something about this group of people, or they have them from the data set that they purchased or just in their CRM somehow. We got to do something with
Right.
them. We need this number to go up. And this is the only group of contacts that we have access to or data from. So let's get in there, right? It's opportunity is waiting for
Yeah.
us. The leads trap. Salesforce made the lead object in the year 2000, disconnected from the contact object. So now we have contacts that we view as relationships, right? And then this other lead object. We need lots of that. So then we send and we create ads to create as many of those as possible. But since it wasn't a trusted connection, there's lots of low quality stuff that we don't want
Right.
to spend a ton of resources on, but we need to understand what it is. So let's create an SDR team, an SDR motion and automation to sift through all the low quality leads so that we can find the good stuff
Right.
for the sales team. And that's what that
Right.
call was from NetSuite, where I'm in the system now. I downloaded one thing and now I'm in that pile of leads, probably an MQL just because I downloaded the content.
Yep.
And that's what we're going to get into today. Like this, where my empathy has grown is the old way of lead, MQL, SQL. Like there was no space to do it any other way. Like sales team is in charge of really building trust and moving them down the pipeline. So like they're the only ones that have or that are given agency
Right.
to actually turn it into like revenue and qualification and stuff like that, right?
Right.
And the framework itself kind of doesn't allow marketing to really do more than that. And because of that, what I've been finding, especially as I mentioned audience researcher, hand raiser, everybody's obviously like aligned on their goals of hand raiser. Like we need as many of those as possible.
Sure.
Marketing literally doesn't know or doesn't have the visibility they need for themselves to take action to move somebody from audience researcher to hand raiser. So if
Right.
we don't have enough hand raisers, sales is the only one allowed to push them there. That means they got to go do outreach into the audience and researcher people that aren't ready for it and aren't asking for it, right?
Right. Yeah, for sure. And there's boy, that's a whole can of worms, and we could do 50 episodes just on that. There's I'll say this briefly because you brought up, the old way of doing things, which is still the way a lot of businesses operate, because they've inherited the systems, the thinking, the process that aligns with it, which is, if we go all the way back to mass media as the primary way that businesses generated audiences, meaning print ads, television ads, billboards, pre-internet, um, the there was no way to have visibility or have a relationship with that audience except for gatekeepers, right? And the, the Glengarry, Glen Ross, leads wrapped in a ribbon come from that era, right? That that inheriting that infrastructure has kind of tied marketing's hands and prevented a lot of folks from stepping into their buyer's shoes and recognizing, okay, sure, I'm marketing. Maybe right now I'm tasked with generating MQLs and my bonus depends on it, but trying to empathize and experience the journey from their buyer's perspective, which is that there is a point where they know who I am, what I do, what I'm selling, or they're like roughly aware of my brand, and are in a bucket in their mind of like, I think that's something related to something that's like one step adjacent to something that I care about. So I have that in the back of my head, but I'm not going to go looking for it or searching it out or whatever. But the next time I see their logo, I think, oh, right. And then I see their content and I go, oh, right. Right. Um, and that can produce a journey that leads us into researcher, which is an active learning about the company, the product, whatever. And marketing, because of there being less direct access to self-service decisions and buying cycles, just simply has not, the mindset has not like fully bloomed into what is possible now, right? In establishing those direct relationships, which is crazy to say when every brand has a mailing list and has a website and tries to get people to follow their LinkedIn page or their Instagram account or like their TikTok videos or whatever. But the approach that I'm seeing is that most businesses are still stuck in we produce a couple of lead magnets. We do a couple of webinars or something in SaaS especially. And if somebody shows up to that, then they are, your definition may vary, but they're a lead or they're a suspect. But at any rate, we're going to get them in the CRM. And what we're going to do is try to pull them kicking and screaming through the funnel from there, and not taking into account the fact that there are people who have come in through those touch points that are in their own stage of the process, which we in Value First label with these audience researcher hand raiser at the front end of that journey. And being able to actually relate to those folks for where they're at, and which helps you recognize the people who are ready to research or hand raise, but also prevents you from over investing in the people who are not in that stage yet, while still keeping the door open for them. Right.
Yeah. And a lot of what we're doing is just giving people a language that they
Absolutely.
need to like do what they know they've been needing to do forever. Because I think I love the way you described that, where in all the ways, good and bad, we've never really evolved. Digital has just given us more information. And since marketing hasn't evolved and organizations haven't evolved as far as what marketing's role is supposed to be, it's when we get to the conversation of we need to do more stuff to naturally push people over to Handraiser, our immediate examples are email blasts and ads. And then it's like, oh, so we're just got to leave it up to the universe and hope, like, and we can't do that, right? Which is true, right?
Right.
But what you can do is create visibility in a way like never before, to be able to explain this, like, this is what audience is doing right? Against the demographic data, against whatever we've decided our goals are, right? Like, what can we do as a marketing team? And usually in conjunction with sales, like the kind of thing like move this content. And by the way, I'm going to work on calling that value catalyst as opposed to lead magnet. It's going to be a thing, 2026. What can we move it from here to over here? And then all of a sudden we'll be engaging the right people, and they'll be, so much of this is giving the buyer the opportunity to say, yes, you hear me, you see me, you understand me. Most of the time, we're not even giving them that opportunity. So that means,
Yeah.
unless they're in intense pain, they're not
Yeah.
going to tell us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Despite how much progress we have made in terms of delivering content and experiences to people to help facilitate those purchase decisions, we still put so much of the labor on them. It's crazy, you know, like the, particularly, we saw this in the late 20 teens of everybody rushing to create their own category because they read, category pirates. Um, and there is absolutely something to creating your own category, but if you're another SaaS meeting scheduling app, you're not creating a category. Relax. Um, but people were saying like, oh, well, we're a, whatever, time management or shared time interface or something. And this is just one example of these anti-patterns. And somebody looking at that has to be like, I don't think I share like timeshare. I don't know what that is. That's not for me, right? There's so many big and small ways that we put the labor of figuring out, is this even something for me, onto the buyer, rather than trying to figure out how we can help them accomplish that and step in and help them do it.
Yeah.
The analogy, if you want to pull this screen share up, we didn't look at this beforehand, but this is the analogy that I use when I'm talking with clients and prospects about it, which is the work that we are doing. And all analogies break down, so not everything about this is perfect. But when we are looking for people to help with our businesses, which is to say we are prospecting, we are finding customers, that whole motion of somebody is a stranger and they are a satisfied customer, everything that happens between that. A great analogy for that is fishing, which is we are going to go somewhere with our equipment, with our expertise, and we are going to try to catch a fish, whether that's in the ocean or a pond. And there's a lot of fish there. Some of them we want to catch, some we don't. Maybe we don't care. But if our goal is to just catch any fish, doesn't matter. Could be, a, a could be a bluefin tuna, or it could be a guppy. Then what you do doesn't really matter, right? Like if you have the bare minimum equipment, the bait you're using, the time, where you go, how you do the fish, the actual methodology, doesn't matter. All of that stuff. If you just want any fish, you don't care, great. Like you don't really have to do anything. You just have to brute force.
Get the dynamite out.
Right. And you'll end up with some fish or whatever. But I don't know of any businesses that are sustainable in that respect. I could argue for some products, everybody buys toilet paper, but that's not the right approach for, I would say, the vast majority of businesses.
Agreed.
If you have a specific kind of fish you're looking for, a specific kind of customer or business that you help succeed, either because because your offering is targeted for them specifically, or because you have identified these patterns, these are the people that we can really affect, that we can really impact, whose lives we can change, whose businesses we can improve, whatever your goals are. If you know who those fish are, everything is super important. The bait that you use, the time that those fish feed, the place where they feed and how they feed, the method that you use to fish. It's why fly fishing is different than deep sea fishing, is different than, you know, people just going on Sundays down to the park here in Nashville and catching catfish. All of those things are super different. So if you have people in that audience that are undifferentiated, right? You have some people who are in the audience stage in your CRM, let's say, and they've said like, "Oh, I'm curious, like what this is about," or "I'm joining their mailing list because I've identified them as somebody who I might want to apply for a job with one day." And you have prospective customers, you have people who are in that audience pool because they are wondering if maybe in 3 years they might be able to make a case to bring your tool into their business, but they're not sure. Having that experience, understanding those members of that audience pool well enough that you can fish for the folks who are ready and looking to move from audience to researcher and researcher to hand raiser. That is the value catalyst, right? Like
Yeah.
knowing those folks well enough and having the content experiences, whatever your toolkit, whatever is contained in your toolkit to facilitate that journey. That's how we have leverage in this era. That's the only
Yeah.
way that we're going to be able to do it.
And that's our perspective of then, like if you go a level deeper, and I'm not a fisherman, but I
I'm not
happened
either.
to use a fishing analogy for like the first time ever last week, and it landed perfectly when trying to have a content strategy conversation in an inside of an ABM conversation,
Sure.
right? Where the analogy of like fishing with a net versus spear fishing, right? Whale hunting, if you will. That's always been reserved, like for sales team and account owners, and you know. But as soon as you say, like, imagine we just had a boat, and we knew exactly what kind of chum we needed to throw in the water, and now you just had like a school of dolphins like show up and they're just hanging out at the boat. You have access to them whenever you want. And like that's the difference between like how marketing can approach. By the way, we're saying marketing. Usually the salespeople participating in the marketing are the best people to create that environment. They know which meat's supposed to go out there. They know which meat's worked every other time, right? And now
Yeah.
we can create this space inside of our systems where you see all of that data coming together in ways that we haven't been able to before. And now it's what we hear people saying is like, we know unified data is going to be an initiative this year. But that doesn't mean we just throw all the data like together, like in a CRM. And so where do we go first? Okay, which data does sales need? Which data does marketing need? Which data does CS? Never talking about how does the data tell us where the
Yes.
buyer is in the
Right.
journey.
Yeah. And part of that data conversation is always, the highest priority and lowest hanging fruit is actually usually also the most useless, in the
Mm-hmm.
sense that it's like, oh, well, let's use an enrichment tool to make sure that we get job title on this record. And I don't know about you, but the hit rates on those are not as, I'm not seeing a stellar
Yeah.
precision rate on that kind of thing. But it's, oh, let's make sure we have emails on everybody who reaches a certain life cycle stage, or let's make sure that our let's run them through zero bounce or never bounce, and let's see if they're catch-alls, and let's make sure that the numbers are formatted so that we can send these people SMSs. Do you get an opt-in? No. Well, right.
I know. How lucky
There's a
are we
lot
that
of, yeah.
how
There's all
lucky
of
are we that we
this.
can now require properties with life
Right.
cycle stages?
Yeah. Not a solution. Necessary but not sufficient to good data. So the the transactional stuff, the things that are easy, and the things that are hard are what set us apart, right? When we're trying to serve our audiences, and so connecting Clay or any data enrichment, Zoom info, whatever, so that you can get phone number and email and identify a company and associate somebody and try to run a content driven ABM strategy. That fine. Like that's like, does the engine on the car run? It's not going to help you differentiate the dolphins from all the other fish that are attracted by the chum at the boat, right? Or if you're fishing, if you're pole fishing, in your, I don't know a lot about fishing, but I do know, for example, if you can, if you're fishing for German brown brook trout, you're gonna probably catch some rainbow trout, and that's fine. But if you're looking for German browns, which are, my understanding, is pretty rare, then you're going to want to throw those rainbow trout back, right, and only pull the right ones out of the water. That the data that matters is the data that helps you differentiate. Like, you're going to have rainbow trout in your pond. You're going to have, or in your mountain stream. You're going to have German brown in your mountain stream, and that's fine. You're going to have competitors in your CRM. You're going to have haters in your webinars. You're going to have people who are trying to apply for a job or doing some form of like indirect competitive research or whatever. The data that matters is how you can look at somebody in the audience or the researcher stage and tell the difference. That's hard. It's not. It's easier than it used to be, but it's mostly hard strategically.
Mhm.
Understanding what it makes a customer who or prospective customer who is aligned with what you're doing, excited, energized, moving through the pipeline, and laying out the things that they need to indicate that that's who they are versus somebody else, right? And the way that we did that 5 years ago was intersperse CTAs in our mailing newsletters that go out on our corporate mailing list, right? Like, or run ads. I see these all the time. LinkedIn ads that just say like, "Hey, do you want leads? We get leads. Click here to learn how we get leads." As a boosted post, and it's like, what are these people doing?
Oh,
Um,
man.
that the value first is like, we got to push value way earlier in the customer's experience. Product led growth is a discipline where that's the name of the game, but we need that data to we get people into the audience stage and value first. We get them in the CRM because we've done something helpful for them, hopefully. And then we continue to do it. We lay the breadcrumbs out to mix nature metaphors. We use the bait and the timing and where they feed and their method of feeding to fish for those people, not to pull them directly into an opportunity as soon as they click a link, but to say like, look, if this is the challenge, if this is what you're trying to accomplish, we can help. Here's the path, right? And we can think about those. The micro conversion terminology has fallen out of fashion, but engagements, activities, experiences, or content that by engaging with them, it indicates to us in a trackable way, like, oh, this person is like actively researching some aspect of what we do, a problem that we solve, or our approach to it, or the actual functionality that solves that problem for them.
Yeah.
That is how, like, we build these paths, and the people who walk down them, or, great. Then it's just about getting the paths in front of people and facilitating that journey.
Right. And that's the, I mean, I can't shut up about this just because it's getting through to humans that this stuff has not gotten through to before.
Yeah.
And it's all to do with the words that can change the perspective. And as simple as like when you understand how leads are looked at, uh, yeah, I've said before many times, dehumanizes the process because no human would treat another human the way that we treat leads if that person was standing right in front of you,
Right.
right? And you think lead magnet, like it's sort of like pulling you like away, and then I'm going to treat you like a lead, right?
Yeah.
Versus value catalyst, like I'm going to give you value and I want it like to work for you, like because if we do that, it builds trust. You remember us. Like I do find more leaders are moving towards connections, conversations, and relationships as far as tracking. And that takes it like, how do you track um, like beyond number of relationships and number of conversations? The beauty of AI with these systems in place and signal recognition coming in everywhere, you can start to track health like from the get-go. And like, what does health mean? Like, you can call it trust, like if you want, right? And this is where twice this week, and you know me, as soon as I get permission, like just a couple signals, like we're going all in. But successfully on the call, like been able to change how somebody looks at the lead object in HubSpot by calling it an interest object, where what we do at that part is we're monitoring interest. We want to increase interest.
Mm-hmm.
And that we can only tell that if we're paying attention to like sentiment and like how these people are engaging, when they're engaging. We can't tie it to, so it helps people switch from the score means they're good to sell to,
Right.
instead of like the score means they're interested like in us. They're building trust, however you want to put it. And now we can separate from, we're scoring the health here, and we can score that like all the way through the whole life cycle, by the way, right? I'm excited. We're going to be doing an unboxing of lead scores and health scores pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
But then you can separate it from deal scores, because the
Yes.
deal scores were measuring the health of the opportunity, like
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
now these things can work together instead of fighting between like deal stage 0 and lead object and like which one when. Like we're measuring different things. We got to put things in place like to measure those things.
Yeah, for sure. And there's so much opportunity, like I don't air dirty laundry, but I've had so many engagements in the past where clients or I pulled the ripcord on engagements where prospective clients, were like, we need better visibility into like what's going on with our pipeline and our pre-opportunity interactions with leads, and they through usually much hand wringing and arguments, are just unwilling to modify their sales or marketing process or philosophy to account for or align with the way that prospects actually make decisions. Like so many questions about like, well, how do we know when sales should reach out if why don't we just reach out to everybody? It's like, well, that's what you've been doing for the last 7 years, and you told me you feel like it's not working. So, like, I think we've solved that problem there. But the being unwilling to offer or do anything that actually allows your prospects to offer you that interest, right? Like they submit a form and they get a thing that says somebody will reach out to you in, 72 hours, and we send an email, and then maybe, a rep does or doesn't try to call them once or twice. But that's, that's not how, that's how so many sales processes works. And again, we are desensitized to that. And so sometimes we buy like that, but we don't recognize the difference between like, that's the only conversion flow opportunity that we gave to our prospect. And they're just trying to figure out like, how much does this align with me? And I thought I might get an email or something that would be helpful because your website isn't, right? And so like that scoring the interest and eventually scoring the deal depends on having, you know, hopefully analyzed, talked to your customers, identified the segments, the profiles within those, within your customer base and where they're at when they're at in that audience stage, so that we can say like, oh, people who are here show us with their behavior and tell us with their actual words what they are wondering, what they are looking for. We try some stuff out and see what people in this stage of their journey do. And that is what affords us the ability to measure it, right? But if it's like, well, we have a form and then they can, contact us for a quote, and we have a mailing list, right? There, you can add all the enrichment data you want. You don't have any useful data to actually like recognize and respond to those needs to get that interest and to start to get some measurement on it.
Yeah. And this is where we start making decisions based on random acts of marketing.
Yep.
And like whether it's
Or
sales,
brute
marketing,
force.
any initiative, so often it doesn't continue like based on just the tactic itself. Oh, we tried the LinkedIn thing. It didn't
Right.
work.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a waste of our sales team time. And then you look at what they did and it's like pitch slap, pitch slap, pitch slap, pitch slap. Like not
Right.
even directed, like not even targeted in any way. Right. And it's like, oh, that didn't work for you, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Clearly the billion people platform like must not be good for you. I guess. Yeah. We'll have to figure it out. Let's go to more trade shows.
Yeah. The number of times that I've heard, tactics don't work from, the number of times in 1 week I have heard somebody say like, this is our best channel. And then somebody else that is the same in the same industry running almost the exact same kind of operation say that channel doesn't work. I mean, that number is really high. And the number of people in relationship businesses who say like, social and or LinkedIn just doesn't work in our business. It's like, wow. Like,
Yeah.
I don't.
I mean, it wasn't too long ago, and some of these businesses are still there. Like websites.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, our people are not, they don't go on websites. They don't do digital.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
that's where, oh man, some of those conversations you're just not going to win. But like, again, humanizing the language and turning it into like, oh yeah, you're in this demographic that we're describing right now. What was the last website like you went to? Right? There's humans, every business. And I'm like, man, the more clients we run into, like it's no matter the industry, region, whatever, however you want to slice it, like it does boil down to the buyers, the humans, just like all humans, they want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to be understood, they want their expectations met, not even exceeded. Like exceeded's nice to have, just meet the expectations.
Yeah.
And if you can apply that to the audience and researcher stage, like what what I need to do that is a great conversation a couple of days ago, like where we got some great social clips. And but since they were built off of brand focused, like this is who we are kind of video, until we started getting into like, okay, what works during the sales call? And like, well, I want to get to that aha moment. I want to make them say, oh, I haven't thought about it that way. Right. So how do we get them to do that before like the sales call? And then are any of these clips going to do that? And it's like, no. But they immediately know which clips would, right?
Mm,
And now we can only do that if we know like where they are like in the journey. And that's like I like audience. And again, this is not just a wait and see, right? That's not what we're saying here. But when you
right.
label somebody as audience, which I know we're not exactly aligned on who would be in the CRM. I'm a fan of like, especially in the target account situations. Like if you have like 100
Yes.
companies, right, and you know who everybody is, like that's your audience, and they should all be in the CRM, right? And that's what I'm seeing. And you get to start labeling them as decision makers and influencers, and like start to really piece it out. And like once you have them there, you can start to capture like signals. And when you
Yep.
have audience and interest, like you've decided the audience, like you can make that decision. You don't have to wait for somebody to say, I'm audience, right? It's just another
Correct.
way to think about ICP. Um, and like you can interest, the word interest, like it's okay for the business, like to be interested, right? So
Yeah.
we're tracking
Yeah.
interest on both sides.
For sure.
And now you have a place to just understand what's happening over there instead of just this gap of, well, we've got this thing happening. So now we base all of our strategy around trying to get them to download the thing because that's the only way we can see, right? And it's just
Right.
not true
Yeah.
anymore.
Right. Yeah. And some of that, I do think, well, let me say first, I do think very expansively about audience. I love it as a term for this stage because it's somebody whose attention you have been fortunate enough to have a slice of for a period of time. From a system standpoint, there are just so many people that end up in your CRM whose attention you don't have, you know? And so if somebody joins your newsletter and that's their first interaction, they go into audience. But somebody who is like CC ends up in there because they're CC'd on a whatever on a vendor email thread from somebody's connected inbox, not audience. Um, but yeah, like getting. I feel like I'm just going to say the same thing that I've already said here, but the being able to having that level of precision, even right, like we used to, going all the way back to the top of this conversation, we used to force that, or used to only be the domain of a salesperson talking to a business or a person because there was nowhere else to store it and nobody else responsible for it, no other way to see into it. And even still in there probably is still room, particularly in like very large high stakes deals, for a lot of that to be there because a lot of that stuff happens offline. But the the a critical role for keeping these kinds of relationships human is to set the systems up and build new incremental systems that take the dimensions of that relationship that do not need to be human off of the human, right? Like the salesperson or team will remember everybody's names, you know, not all of us, but most of us are good at names, or capable anyway. But we do not expect a top performing sales rep to remember the email addresses of everybody in the CRM or in their contact book or their phone number, right? Like, push comes to shove, they might be able to get a lot of them, but that is a way that we can take cognitive load off of the rep so that they can focus on the things that make them and their prospective customers successful. And we just have so much more opportunity to do that now, like with interest, right? Like finding these things, what helps people in the audience stage, figure that out for your customers and your business, that combination, and then take the measurement, take the analysis, take the figuring out the intent, use AI to help you analyze their chats, whatever, right? To score, get dimensions on that, and give it to the salesperson who can use it to invest in the relationship.
Yeah. And a conversation I was just having today about events management, like great, first of all, that they're separating the events out to include ones we're going to exhibit at versus ones that we just know the audience is there. We just need to have somebody there, right? That's usually a salesperson. What do you do when they come back, right? And so much of the stuff that doesn't go in that would be an audience is because they're not a lead, right? It wasn't anything special. I just connected with them on LinkedIn, maybe, right? Now we have systems that like bring that person in, like they're in the category. Like if you connected with them on LinkedIn, salesperson, there's something there. And if you connect those dots and they like various posts or it creates the space again to capture these signals that will tell you something, even if it's just like the value of that event overall. Like, is that the audience, right?
Right.
And those are the things that I'm realizing as we talk about this, and why you want to have this conversation with sales. Create this other space, and we don't call it a lead. Nobody's on the hook for making sure, like trying to hit that number or making conversion rates go up or whatever, because that's often why things don't go in the system.
Right.
Right. Because now it'll be on my list and I know it's not worth it right now. So we're just going to store it over here. Like actually, back up, right?
Yeah, and like in walking any tightrope, you can fall off either side, right? The other way you fall off events is that you spend a big budget on swag and a booth and flying everybody out, and so you need to show some action, right? You need to I'm hesitating to even use the word like results or outcomes because they're not, right? But it's like, well, how many leads did we get from being at that trade show? And the number, but you tell me, when somebody asks that question, what number gets quoted to the CEO by the CMO when they ask that question?
The attendee list.
Yeah, badge scans, right? Like, so many leads. And so like the SDRs or the reps need to be so busy calling people. Oh man, we're calling people, so many people about this, right? And how many opportunities did we get? Oh yeah, we got 5,000 badge scans and we got 2 opportunities out of it. Oh, did we know those people before the thing? Oh yes, we did actually. Like we had a discovery call in the month ahead, but they attended and we talked to them there. So we're attributing it to the event, right?
Meanwhile, not looking at any other metrics, like the talk that we did, that we spent time on, and how many people were there, and who was there, And that the conversations, like so much of this, similar to all of the other conversations we had about doing closed one debriefs. Like, are we doing an event debrief to just talk to the sales team what conversations they were having? So much gets uncovered there. And man, that is the quickest path towards actually realizing value, just to make that a habit. Because then people start remembering and start taking notes better, being ready for that conversation. Right now, all of a
Yes.
sudden, the data shows up in context,
Right.
and we can actually understand it and then make decisions on whether it's good or bad, instead of like the opposite side, like you mentioned. If that salesperson does connect with them on LinkedIn, knows they're no interest, but then it does make it into CRM, now it's got to go into the sequence, and we've got to
Right.
start pinging that. Like, and
Right.
we're okay with
And
it because that's
the
how
way
we
we've done it.
that's how
Yeah.
we do it.
And what about the 5 people who were maybe not leads, but went and talked to the speaker who presented at that session, but didn't talk to sales because the speaker was, from product or from
Yeah.
engineering or from whatever.
And
And
then you
those are
find
great
out, you ask
relationships, but
them to
yeah,
put them in the CRM. They're like, oh no, I don't want the sales team reaching out. Like, this
right.
is a good relationship. Why would I do
Yeah.
that to this other human being? Like, literally, that's the reaction. Like,
Yeah.
I would never wish this on this person I just met. So no, we
Right.
can't have their data in the CRM.
Yeah. Yep.
Meanwhile,
Um,
that's some of the like highest value relationships. I started that way because it's like direct access to the subject matter expert. Value was the first thing that happened in the relationship. And eventually that stuff comes around, but not nearly as often or consistent or as high rate as it could.
right.
Right.
Yeah. Although there's always opportunity there, right?
Yeah. That's what I
The
mean. Like, when we bring this data in, when we start talking from the perspective of unified customer views, we bring every team that
Yeah.
touches customers into that conversation. You start to bring data like that together, and just the proximity of it being together, like, creates insights and just engages people, and the walls start to come down, transparency starts to go up, and the trust goes up between teams.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, teams that do not know how to work together figure out ways to work together, right? If you
Yeah.
can build that internal
Yeah.
trust too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad
So
we're back
me too.
in 2016, 2026. Sorry, January 16th, 2026. We're going to be hitting all of the value path stages, maybe some more than others. We could sit in this one, forever, probably. But
Yeah. Well, there will always be something about every value stage to come back to. So we will definitely hit each one more than once from different perspectives.
yes, indeed. So until next time, everybody have a great weekend. Thanks, Josh.
Adios.